Welcome to chapter 11, 10, I don't know what we're up to, of Memoirs of a White Guy. This week's instrument, man, if you didn't listen to last week's, you'd be confused right now. But this week's instrument of choice for the intro was called Improvised Recorder from grade 1. And that was my rendition of Hot Cross Buns. So I hope you enjoyed it. What a start to the podcast. I also realized that when you go like this, sounds like a train. So that was what I did today. What did you do today? I woke up at 10 today and was like, oh, I'm going to make a train noise. And then that took me through to 2 p.m. And now I'm recording the podcast. So that's how productive my life is. No, that's not true, actually. Earlier today, I caught up with a good friend of mine, John Edney, who is participating in Movember this year and has been for the last 8 years. If you don't know what Movember is, it is an initiative run by Beyond Blue, which is a charity organization which aims to improve. So men grow mustaches for a month and people sponsor them, and it aims to improve men's health. So prostate cancer, men's suicide, and it's a very good cause. So I had John on, and during the week he did a live stream with Peter Hitchener from Channel 9 News about Movember. So John's feels very strongly about the cause, and he's already raised $1,500 just himself this month, so he does great work for that cause. So I was very happy to have him on. We talk about our favorite mows and doing the live stream with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Peter Hitchener. So that's something to look forward to in the podcast. That'll be just later on. But in the meantime, there's a hell of a lot more recorded to come. All aboard the dick joke train. We're going to be leaving in 2 minutes, or no, now. We could probably go, maybe 2 minutes for the next dick joke. We'll see. So what I want to talk about this week, I wanted to talk about, that's right. So last week, people were messaging me, and I've had lots of people message me, and I answered the question last week on the podcast. But people kept asking me, do you get noticed in public? Like, have you ever got noticed? And it reminded me of a story that I forgot to tell last week, so I'm going to tell this story, right? This was before some of my videos started to blow up. So this was probably when I only had about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 likes on Facebook. Like, nothing too big or nothing too serious or whatever. And I was at a gig, and I was at a gig with it was in Thornbury in Melbourne. And at this gig, it's a weird situation to explain. I was backstage with Dave O'Neill, who is a very accomplished Australian comedian, has been on TV and stuff, and Dave Hughes, who is a household name in Australia. Like, if you're from Australia and, had ever watched comedy before, you'd be familiar with Dave Hughes. For those people overseas, he's on the Footy Show here. He's on TV fairly regularly. He does Drive Radio, which is like, the most popular time slot, 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. So he's he's probably, if not the, or one of the highest names in Australian comedy. So this made it a very weird situation that I was in. And I was like, pretty excited just to be talking to them. And they allowed me to perform at their room and stuff. And I was, just excited to be there. So we were standing there having a chat, and they're really down-to-earth guys. And a few people who'd watched the show started to come backstage, or just to the side of stage where we were, and to thank Dave O'Neill and to, say hi to Hughesy and give them, and some people were taking a photo with Dave and stuff. And I was sitting there awkwardly, just like third wheeling it. And this mum came over. She rushed over with her, and she had a kid who was about 16 maybe. And he was standing there. She's like, come on, let's take a photo with Dave, and then we'll just go home. So the kid he puts his arm around Dave, and as they're taking the photo, this 16-year-old kid just looks at me. I'm standing there awkwardly just on my phone, trying to act popular and act busy, because I'm not. And he goes, sorry, are you Luke Kidgell? And I was like, looked up, and I was like, oh shit, I've parked him in. I've done something to his girlfriend. How does he know who I am? I'm just weirded out. I'm like, why does this guy know my name? And he quickly finishes taking the photo with Dave Hughes, and then comes over to me, shakes my hand. He's like, man, I'm a huge fan of your stuff. I love your videos. And this was when no one watched my videos. I was just confused. And he was like, man, I saw you open for Lewis Spears at the Melbourne Comedy Festival last year. I thought you were great. I've been following your stuff ever since. I'm such a big fan. And I was like, man, you're standing next to someone, two guys who have been legends of Australian comedy for 20 years, who have both been on TV, radio, and done all these amazing things. And you're sitting there frothing over me because I make YouTube videos. I'm like, what do you... It was really cool, and I can't thank the guy enough. It was awesome. I actually got recognized twice that night. See, this thing, I'm not trying to brag here. This never happens. It was bizarre, and I couldn't fathom it. And it happened earlier that night too. I think it happens a bit more sometimes at comedy places because the people who like my stuff are obviously fans of comedy. So it does happen sometimes, but it was bizarre and it was very cool. And it was almost like, so he starts there and he goes to his mum, oh, can I get a photo with Luke? And Dave O'Neill and Dave Hughes are staring at me like, who is this guy? Because I'd only just met them, and they were being really nice to me because I was like the new guy. And they were like, who is this guy? Like, do we not know? And Dave Hughes was looking at me like, what? And I took a photo with this kid, and the mum was confused, like, who is this? Why does my son want a photo with this other kid who looks like my son's age? And the kid was like wrapped, and then he left. And Dave Hughes and stuff were like, what was that? And I was like, I don't know. And it was weird because I was trying to act cool the whole time, because I was fangirling a bit over Dave Hughes and stuff, because, I've been a big fan of his stuff. He's been on TV for years. Obviously, I look up to him as as a great Australian comic. So I was trying to play it cool and act cool. And it was like I had paid someone to come up at the best timing possible and to make me look cool in front of them. It was the best timed person who's ever recognized me ever. Because then after the guy left, they were like, oh, cool. And they're like, oh, what was that about? And I was like, oh, I make videos online. He must have seen one of them. And they're like, right. I don't think they got it. They were also confused. I was confused. But yeah, that's definitely the best being recognized story I have by far. Because whoever that guy is, thank you very much. He might listen to the podcast, who knows? And I met another guy that night as well, and that guy was also nice. But so yeah, thank you to those two guys for making me look far cooler than I am in front of people I look up to and respect. So that was cool. What else do I want to talk about? Oh yes, so I want to talk about my work, right? So I've talked about it before. I work at a golf course in Melbourne, and it's very fun, right? So golf people. Let's say, I could probably get fired for talking about this stuff. It'll be fun. So golf people are very pretentious and very often, they're high-strung people usually. And you get asked the strangest stuff. And you get asked, because obviously any job, if you've ever worked in retail, you get asked dumb questions on a day-to-day basis. It's part of the job, right? Because you realize straight away that when you talk to strangers who aren't your friends, the people are dumb as dog shit, like multiple people. So, for example, yesterday I got asked because I work on a golf course and we have kangaroos at our golf course, right? And yesterday when I was working was like 30 degrees. It was a pretty hot day, and a guy came in and was like, "Hey, do kangaroos attract snakes?" I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, do they? I don't like snakes, and I was wondering if the kangaroos attract the snakes. I'm like, do you honestly think that kangaroos emit some kind of snake pheromone that just draws all the... No, what is wrong with you? When have you ever walked past a kangaroo and been like, oh, snake food? What is... And this happens on a day-to-day basis. One day I was working there and it was raining, right? It was raining. That's the only thing you need to know to understand this. And a guy called the shop and he was like, hey, mate, I'm in... And he was in the same suburb that I was in. He goes, I'm in this suburb that you're in. And I was just looking out my back window and I was wondering if the golf course was wet at the moment. No, it isn't, mate. It's a miracle, and it stopped raining around the perimeter. What are you talking about? You're looking out your back window, and you're asking me if it's wet. You're a full-grown adult, and you don't understand the concept of precipitation. It drives my head in. And obviously, it happens at everyone's job. I understand that. This is just me complaining. But yesterday, we had a particularly dumb incident happen at work. And also, like, not much really ever happens at a golf club. Like, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's just, like, old men trying to avoid their wives. And that's it. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So, yesterday, some guy came in, and was like, "Oh, hey, on, mate. I just got my putter stuck up in a tree on the 15th hole. So yeah, I just need a cart to go out, and we can just go out and retrieve my putter from the tree." And I was like, how'd you get a golf club stuck in a tree? He's like, "Oh, I just lost the club championship and threw it into the tree." And I was like, "Yep, obviously that's standard I hate my wife behavior." So I was like, "Yep," I went out there with him on the course. And we got to the tree, and the guy's like, "Yep, it's just in this one up there." And he points to it, and I'm like scanning the tree line. I'm like, "Oh," like I was looking at like the 4 to 5 meter mark, which is the standard I'm being a dickhead and throw my putter in a tree kind of height. And I was like, "I can't see it, man." And then he's like, "Nope, just up there." And I look up another 4 meters on top of that, and I was like, "What? That metal branch at the top of the tree?" He's like, "Yep, that's correct. That's my putter." It was so impressive how high he got this thing. And I was like, and he looked back at the green from where he threw the putter, and then looked back up at the tree. And I look back at the green, and I'm like, "Mate, this guy's got forearms. This guy's a rig." Because, I mean, he's a tool, but he's a rig because he's thrown it a long way. So I was like, "All right, let's get this putter down." So we brought out with us a ball to throw at it, and a broomstick. And I thought we bought the broomstick to because it was, going to be, we just stand there and knock it out because broomsticks are long. No. He bought the broomstick to throw up another 5 meters to get out his putter. And also, this putter was worth over $400. So that's why we were going to get it, right? And also, if it was worth that much to you, why would you throw it? Anyway. So we started throwing this thing, and eventually we got it down, and there were people playing golf around us, and me, I'm dressed in my staff uniform, I'm piffing a purple ball up at a tree for 15 minutes straight, and all of the people playing golf were just like, "What is happening?" These staff members do the weirdest shit on their breaks, and I had to explain, I'm like, "There's a putter in the tree, not me, this dickhead's fault," and we eventually got it down, and this shit really never happens at the golf club. But I mean, over 5 years, I have 4 stories from the golf club. I've unbogged carts from the middle of dams. People have driven the motorized golf buggies into the middle of a dam. It was actually impressive. I wasn't even mad. I was just like, I don't know how you get the cart that far into the dam. Anyway, the best story, right? The best story that's ever happened at the golf club, well, to me, was definitely the black sheep story, as it shall henceforth be known. And this is also the story as to why and how I started stand-up comedy in the same story. So people always ask you, why do you do stand-up? And I honestly had never really given it much thought. And then I thought back to this black sheep incident at work, and I was like, that is the reason why I do stand-up comedy. So, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, right? And I was at work, so I was about 17, I think. Anyway, not important to the story. And I came to work like it was any other normal day. And then little did I know that within 2 hours of my shift starting, I will have heard the shittest joke I've ever heard in my entire life. That was the day when I heard it. It was still and will always be the worst joke that has ever been told to me. So I was doing my job, which is picking up golf balls on the driving range. "Oh, you handle balls as a living?" That's the second shittest joke I've ever heard, okay? So 2 hours into my shift, a black sheep from a nearby farm escaped onto the golf course. Now, I don't know if you know much about golf courses, but things just don't happen on golf courses. In order of chaotic events at a golf course, it goes kangaroo fight, hole in one, black sheep. The only thing above black sheep is 2 black sheep, and the only thing above that is 2 black sheep in a kangaroo fight. So, I mean, also all these old people, right, just start losing their minds because this isn't what they asked for as part of their pension. So, also, no one would have cared if this sheep was white, but no, it was all these old people "Back of the bus for you, you woolen goat." So everyone's just freaking out, and people started calling the pro shop "black sheep, there's a sheep walking around, there's a black sheep." And it wasn't a sheep, it was a black sheep, and everyone started freaking out. And I was like, fine, I'll go outside and investigate this sheep situation. And I went outside expecting the absolute worst, this big jacked up sheep, the sheep version of Mr. T. I get outside and it's like, yo, quit your jibber jabber. I pity the farm. But I get it out there, right? And it's the cutest little lamb I've ever seen. Like, just adorable little lamb. And I start patting it, and I just start playing games with it, like, nah, like, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? And the old guys are like, no, sir, he's got a fucking gun. So, they're all racist. And, but now I realized and I felt that it was my responsibility to take care of the sheep, because I played one of the shepherds in my kindergarten's nativity play. So I felt like it was under my jurisdiction to save this black lamb from getting lynched by all these old rich white guys, right? So I was like, yep, this is my duty. I'm going to take this on board. So by the time I got my biblical white gown and my shepherd's staff to deal with this situation, the lamb actually moved into the car park, which is the location that I heard the shittest joke I've ever heard in my entire life. So I was chasing this sheep around the golf course, probably like 10, 15 minutes maybe, and I wasn't really having any luck. And I don't really know what was my goal. I think it was just like, get it out of the immediate area so we don't have to deal with this sheep anymore. So the sheep was in the car park, and then this lady driving this old, it was probably like an old 1995 Mitsubishi Magna. She was driving through the car park, and she saw me herding the sheep, and she just screeches to a halt in the car park, and like she manually winds down her old ass windows, probably like, you know, just to a point where she can stick her head through, and it was like, it made a noise. It was like, and she stuck her head through the tiny gap of a window, and she was like, excuse me. And I was like I was making eye contact with the sheep. I was like the sheep whisperer at this point, and I didn't want to lose eye contact with the sheep, but it's my duty and, you know, fulfilling customer service that I have to answer patrons at the golf club's questions. So I was like, yeah, how can I help you? But like, I was still maintaining eye contact with the sheep. Like, I'm not gonna let some old lady ruin 15 minutes of good solid herding. I've come way too far for this. She can wait. But she kept winding down her window like, and I was like, oh, okay, she's gone to a lot of effort here, like winding down her window. She must have something really, really important to say, so I should probably give her my full attention. And then she came out with the shittest joke I've ever heard in my entire life. She's like, excuse me, they shouldn't call this a golf course. They should call this a zoo. And I stopped, and I looked away from the sheep, and I stared straight at the lady, and thus began one of the greatest stare-offs of all time. Like, I wasn't going to give in, she wasn't going to give in, so she just kept staring at me until I laughed, and then I just kind of glared at her quietly, and I'm like, talk about Silence of the Lambs, because that's a movie, and sheep, alright, and then, and I knew this lady wasn't going to leave until I laughed, so, like, I just coughed out like a real, like the most forced thing you've ever heard. I was like, ha! And then she goes, oh, I knew you'd get it eventually. Like that joke had so many layers to it. Like it was the Da Vinci Code of comedy. And I can honestly say that was the day I decided to do stand-up comedy. Because I was like, if that's the standard that's being thrown out there in society, I've got a damn good shot at this. And that is genuinely like, I was always thought back on that day, and I'm pretty sure then I was like, the world needs humor after that. There's something missing after that golf course zoo reference. Also, when have you ever seen a sheep at a zoo? I mean, obviously New Zealand zoos have an exception, but and like, sheep are a farm animal. Old MacDonald didn't have a zoo, so her joke didn't make sense. It was bad, and yeah, that's the story. That's the worst thing that's ever happened at work, and one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, I wanted to tell that story. I've been meaning to tell that story in the podcast for a while, actually, but finally got a chance. So and all aboard the next segment, because it's time to move on. So now I want to play my chat with John Edney, who I was talking about at the start of the podcast. He's been doing Movember for 8 years, as we discussed, and So yeah, I've had him on because it's something I feel strongly about and have participated in the past. I've grown a mustache. Actually, that's not true. I've grown a pathetic excuse for a mustache in the past for Movember, and I've always thought it's a great cause because I think the work that Beyond Blue does to do with men's health, it goes towards prostate cancer, mental health, and the prevention of male suicide. And I think some of those male health problems sometimes go unnoticed and untalked about. So I think it is a great initiative what John and many other people who are growing mustaches this month are doing. And without further ado, here is my chat with John about Movember and about what our fave mows are. It was a very fun chat. So here it is. Actually, wait, I have to play a recorded jingle before it. Alrighty, I'm joined by John Edney, who's participating in Movember. Thanks for being on the podcast,
Afternoon,
John.
Luke.
So first of all, explain Movember.
Movember, it's a cause that's been around for a little while now. It's predominantly in Australia, the US, and it's growing to Canada now as well, which...
They'd have some good mows.
In Canada?
Yeah.
What it does, it raises money for awareness and prevention of male suicide as well as prevention and research for testicular and prostate cancer. So it encompasses Beyond Blue and the Movember Foundation to raise money for those causes.
Yes, and you've been doing it for how many years now?
This is my 8th year now.
8th year of mustache on your face, 1 month a year. And do you have a girlfriend?
I do.
What does she think every year?
Well, she's actually taking part as well.
Really?
Yeah. She can grow a better one than me.
No, but you know what? A good joke, but John's is actually very impressive. He's actually underselling his mustache a lot. It's only, 20 days in now?
What are we now?
It looks like a permanent
days.
tash, which means you can grow. It takes me a good never, because I've never been able to grow a mustache. I did it 2 years ago, and it looks like filth. It's like Ron. If Ron Weasley could grow a mustache, that's my face. Like that's.
What are we into? A minute 37. There's already a Harry Potter joke.
Yeah. Well, John listens to the podcast. He knows what to expect. So, So talk about, the reason why you started the Movember thing, because I think it's a very important thing. That's why I got you on.
The reason why I started initially was I've been shaving since I was 11, and I thought here's a good way for me to showcase
your talents,
my ability. Yeah. Whereas over time that sort of changed, and I began to realise that these are all things that can affect us all.
Yes,
are likely to affect us all throughout our lives, and. Something that's not publicly known about me is that I'm a police officer, and I have been exposed a lot more to suicide and attempted suicide over the last few years, and it's something that's hit home quite a lot and quite intensely, and I've really put a lot more effort in over the last few years to try and raise some money, and I've been hitting big targets for that reason.
So what's your goal this year?
The goal this year is $2,000.
And I saw for you up to like 1,500.
Just over 1,500 at the moment.
You're 2/3 of the way through the month.
Yeah.
So you're on track.
Yeah.
Because you're over 2/3 of the way there.
It has slowed down a little bit.
Okay.
Because
you get the initial...
of course.
Burst.
You get the initial burst, and as you saw, I had a video with Peter Kidgell.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that.
And that just went through the roof.
So, John live streamed with the man, the myth, the legend himself from Channel 9 news team, Peter Hitchener in Melbourne. And if you don't know who Peter Hitchener is, for overseas listeners and stuff, he's a household name.
He is.
He's a news presenter.
So you think of the biggest name newsreader in your
thing.
city.
Peter Hitchen is the guy,
yeah.
And he's really like I've never met him, but me and my mate went to the Melbourne show earlier in the year. I talked about it. We pretty much just went to meet Peter Hitchener, and it said we knew he was going to be there because he was doing live meet and greets, and we're like, yes, Peter Hitchener's here. We're going. We get there, he left half an hour before we got there, and then we just ate fairy floss and went home. So it was pretty disappointing. But talk us through the live stream with Hitch.
So I'd known Peter for about a bit over 6 months.
Name dropping.
Bit over 6 months, and we're actually Snapchat buddies.
Yeah.
So
how did that work?
Look, we met at an event, and he and I got talking, and he suggested that we become Snapchat friends.
And he's 70, by the way. He's a pretty hip. He's a hip guy.
So I actually asked him if there was any chance he could give me a hand promoting Movember. So he invited me into the studios at Channel 9 about a week ago, and the plan was to just record a video on my phone that I could put on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he's taken it upon himself to suggest doing a Facebook live stream, and it was very successful. On that day alone, I went from $700 raised to $1,400 just off his back.
Good man. That's the kind of promotion that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite type of mustache?
Favorite?
Yeah.
It's got to be the Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck?
Surely.
Yeah. Magnum PI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Never seen it.
You've never actually seen the show?
No.
I've seen. He's on Friends. He dates Monica for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. He's
I haven't seen that either, but I'll check it out.
Really?
Yeah.
Courtney Cox dating Magnum PI is a genuine must see. It's like a 90s. It's a classic.
Do you reckon that's the reason he grew the mustache, to get onto Friends?
I think to get onto to get on Courtney Cox.
That's the direction I was
headed. My favorite mustache is probably this one. Like, I got a fake one here.
Yeah.
And because we're gonna do an Instagram later, but I can't grow a mustache, so I went and bought a fake one. This is actually from my Year 12 media film, Cop Squad.
Okay.
It was an 80s cop film where we all wore fake mustaches to hide our insecurities, because we were in Year 12 and none of us could grow a mustache.
Is that online, that video?
It is, and it's not gonna. It's actually unlisted on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
It'll never be public.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not something that the world needs to see. Cop Squad. But yeah, this is kind of, I like it has the Italian curl at the end, so it curls up back into the nose. And that's one of my favourite tashes, only because it's seedy and sexy at the same time.
Just enough too. It's not too obnoxious in its curl. It's just the right amount.
So yeah, Movember. It's actually a really important cause that I've taken part in the past. I grew one through Year 12, as I was saying. Did I say that earlier? I don't know. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about my filth ranger. So my Ron Weasley do. And I pretty much did it, because it's a good cause, and we're doing it with work and stuff. And I think it's a good thing. Say if you're doing it this year and you haven't done it, next year maybe suggest it in the workplace. It's a fun thing, because customers come in, they go, like regulars go, my motor's coming along well. You put a little jar instead of a tip jar for the month, and you're set. You're on your way to making a change. But I did it during Year 12 exams, just for mainly for something to play with, because it was a pretty boring month. So just in my exams, I'd sit there and stroke it, and it was probably the most entertaining thing I did through Year 12 exams.
Very good.
So people have just finished Year 12 now. If you're doing Year 12 next year, I'd suggest grow a sweet mo and get your friends to sponsor you, and then you have something to twirl, and it makes you feel wiser.
Oh, absolutely. And you're going to get picked on anyway for your lack of growing ability, but
Exactly.
it's all for a good cause. And
Exactly.
You can't lose sight of that. And,
Yeah.
And you'll still get people who will recognise what you're doing, and they'll support you.
Exactly. Thanks very much for coming on the podcast,
Thank
John.
you for having me.
So that was my chat with John Edney, and he's been doing great work. As he said, this is his 8th year now, so definitely get behind him. His goal is $2,000, and he's up to $1,500. So if you want to help him achieve that goal, definitely go support his page. I'll put the link in the description of the podcast and on my Facebook page tonight. So yeah, if you know someone who suffers from mental health or whatever, it might be something you can initiate with your friends or workplace in the future, as it's a great cause. So next November, grow some filthy upper lip hair, and yeah, it's a good cause. So what's next? Questions. Time for question. It's question time. Wait, the question jingle. That was the question jingle. Obviously, everyone knows it. It's a pretty familiar jingle. We're not all idiots, Luke. So the first one is from Zoe. She said, "Hi, Luke. I know you don't like to answer serious questions on your podcast, but I need your advice." Here we go, okay? "I have a zit in my back in a place I can't reach, and it's driving me crazy. What should I do about it?" Cheers from Argentina. Argentina. See, this is exactly what's wrong with the internet. People shouldn't be allowed to listen to this, listen to me yell in my bedroom from around the world. No one should have to listen to this from another country. That is exactly why the internet is ruining the world. I mean, I really appreciate you listening, Zoe, but honestly, isn't there better shit to do in Argentina? I actually don't know much about Argentina, I'll be honest. I know you're weirdly good at basketball and obviously good at soccer. So that's all I know about your country. But in regards to your question, what was your question again? I have a zit in my back in a place I can't reach, and it's driving me crazy. That's annoying, Zoe. That sucks. Maybe get. I mean, right now, if I had something like, say, if I had an itch or a zit or whatever, I might use my recorder and maybe scratch it or try and pop it with something long, like on the back. But if you're not into popping it or whatever, just suck it up. Obviously, she's into popping it though, because she's tried to reach it. So maybe call up a friend and be like, hey, I've got a zit in my back in a place I can't reach. It's driving me crazy. Can you help? That would probably be a more effective solution than emailing into an Australian podcast that I have no idea how you found, but I appreciate you listening anyway. So yeah, maybe ask a friend. Yeah, it's like Millionaire. You go. I mean, 50-50 doesn't apply. Or audience, but yeah, phone a friend was my advice. Get a friend to pop that bad boy for you. You will not have a zit in no time. Cool. So this is the next question. Hi Luke, I found your YouTube channel and your podcast a few weeks ago, and I love your humor. I'm from Argentina. No, this 2 people from Argentina in this. This is ridiculous. I've got a weird. Are you guys friends? Okay, Zoe. Here's my advice about the zit, okay? I can get you and Clara, who this is from, in contact. And Zoe, you call Clara and be like, hey, I heard you listen to this weird Australian podcast. I know you live in Argentina. We probably don't live close, but do you want to come and get this zit popped off my back? And then, if you guys take a photo of just her popping the zit and you guys becoming friends, send it in and I'll talk about it. That's so weird, though, that 2 people from Argentina, A, listen, and B, sent in a question on the same week. That's not going to happen probably ever again, unless you both keep sending in questions. So Clara says, I'm from Argentina, and English is my second language, so I get lost sometimes with the Australian slang and accent, and I was wondering if you could talk about it on your podcast. Keep it up, man. You are doing great, and you're hilarious. Well, your punctuation and spelling and stuff is better than 95% of the questions I get, and her second language is English, which shows you how dumb us Australians are that we can't speak our own language. So also, are you listening to my podcast as a learning how to speak in another language? This is not a good example of proper pronunciation, or I'm an idiot. Clara. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I'm just going to keep pronouncing it differently. And that just shows that I'm not nearly qualified enough to talk about the Australian accent or slang, because I can't even pronounce names. So, what do you want me to talk about, the Australian accent? What's some of the Australian stereotypes? Like mate, but that's a stereotype, but that one's true. We use that one all the time. All right, righto, mate. No, that's pretty much the only. I guess I do it when. I guess I don't realize when I do use Australian slang. Someone asked me a question. Oh yeah, the other day. This is a good example. On my Snapchat story, I was at Bunnings, and people in Australia will know that Bunnings sells sausages. All right, they do sausage sizzles outside. Bunnings is like a hardware store in Australia, if you're not Australian. And they sell sausage sizzle outside every weekend. And I was at Bunnings and they didn't have a sausage sizzle on, but no one here calls them sausages. Everyone calls them snags. So I was like, I'm on a snag hunt. There's no snags here. And I put it on my Snapchat story, and all these people from Britain and America were like, what's a snag? What's a snag? And then I was like, it means a sausage. And they didn't believe me. They were like, no, what does it actually mean? And I'm like, fucking Google it. I'm right. And then some did. And then they sent me the screenshot. They were like, oh, you were right. But yeah, snag's a common one that I guess is weird, but we just say snag. Because it's a snag, mate. It's not a sausage. All right? Here's the thing, Clara, sorry. Can I talk about this next week? Because I think this is a really interesting thing to talk about. But I want to do a whole 5 minutes about it on the podcast. So I'm going to do a bit of research on Australian slang during the week. And then we'll talk about it properly next week. So I'll answer this question properly next week. This is the next one from Naomi. Just listen to the podcast. Love the ukulele. Can't wait to see what you've got in store next week. That's something that you shouldn't be holding out for. All right, what's the question? I know you won't give guys advice about girls, but what about the other way around? Okay, so last week I said this is the last time I'm ever going to give guys advice about how to talk to a girl. It's what I get every week. It's like, hi, I'm 15 and I'm insecure and I don't know how to talk to girls. You use your mouth and your words, okay? So I was like, I'm not going to talk about that again. But she said, what about the other way around? So she wants me to talk about how girls can talk to guys. Also, come to Cairns on your mini tour. Okay, here's the thing. Lots of people have been messaging me about my tour next year. I'm going to be doing a stand-up tour around Australia. I'm going to set up a mailing list soon. So if you all who are interested in coming along and seeing me live, sign up to a mailing list and name which Australian city you're from. And I will aim to come to that city if enough people say that they're from there and want to come, obviously. So yeah, that's how I'm going to work out pretty much all my dates. So definitely, Naomi, when I make it, jump on there and write in Cairns. And if you and all your buddies do it, I'll probably come to Cairns. So, but at the moment, I'm just planning. I've only, definitely planned in the capital cities. But if there's any other places, I think I could go. Obviously, it's very expensive to tour and stuff. So, if any other place I think I could go, then I'll try and schedule in to make everyone happy. That's what I'm all about. But she wants me to give girls advice about how to talk to guys. Man, girls don't need advice. You don't need it. You don't need a line. You've got boobs. That's it. That's game, set, match. Just walk up to us and we'll be like, and obviously, actually, apparently we won't say hi because people who listen to this podcast don't know how to use words. But if you come up to a normal guy who knows his words and his mouth movements, just walk up to him, say hi, and guys will probably be interested to speak to you because you're a female and you're probably going to be better looking than him, any girl. That's the thing. Girls are way more attractive as a gender than guys because we don't put in effort and girls do. And that's the only difference. Like, everyone's always like, man, that guy's, punching above his weight. That guy's batting out of his league. Obviously, because that girl spends 2 hours a day trying to make herself look good. That guy's an idiot and watches, eats lasagna while watching the footy. And he's dating someone who's far more attractive than him. I'm also dating someone, my girlfriend is far more attractive than me. That's just a fact, and it will always be a fact. And, she probably knows it. I know it. So, she denies it, but I'm like, you know it. And that's just the way it works. So, yeah, I don't think girls need advice on how to talk to guys. I never really consider that the girls are, like, nervous about talking to guys because I've always, I've never tried to pick up a dude. So, I'm usually like, I get how guys get nervous because it's intimidating because you're like, oh, I don't want to get rejected and the girl mightn't like me. But, man, if you're a girl, usually the guy will be interested to talk to you. That's my advice. It's not a very good advice, but really I have to wrap up the podcast because it's been going for too long. So, I'm sorry, Naomi, not great advice, but just, I'm sure you're fine, okay? I'm sure you're going to be fine out there. Just have some confidence, walk up to a guy and be like, hey, let's have an interesting conversation. Probably not the best opener, but just start having an interesting conversation. And yeah, you should be fine. Cruising from there on in. I'm going to play us out. It's the end of the podcast now. Thank you very much for listening. This is just a closing jingle called Why I Failed Grade 1 Music. That sounds like a thing from like those action thrillers, like right before like the suspense moment. Anyway, so why are you still listening to this? This is what I do every week. I don't know how to start or end these things. The middle chunk of the podcast is like an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, depending on the week. And the end is like a good 2 out of 3. Bye, guys. I'm just going to... What a disappointing end.